Thanks so much. Hello, good morning. As mentioned, this panel will be addressed in English. So if anybody wants or cares to go for a translation device, please do so right now. Okay, I'll briefly introduce, and very briefly, we have 45 minutes to take over this panel. And I think the best way to do is to be as brief as possible with the introductions and concentrate on the content of our panel. So very quickly, we have here to my right, I have John Donoghue, CEO of National Fiber Networks. I also have Luis Rubio. Luis Rubio is partner at Holland Knight. He's a lawyer. Have Alberto Marín. He is the technical director of Schindler, Mexico. I have Baltazar Rodriguez. He is senior architect, a blockchain engagement leader at IBM Blockchain. And I have Jorge Martinez. He is general director of SACWA and COPEMSA. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I'll go right to it. I'll make a brief introduction, and I'll set the mood for this panel to start. Okay, if you see the title of our panel, we're talking about IoT, smart cities. And these are all buzzwords that are usually used by everybody like they know what they mean. So let us give a very brief introduction of what we are talking about, because we're going to get immersed in IoT and infrastructure. So IoT is much changing the world as we live in. The way we drive, the way we purchase, and even how the energy is used. Nowadays, sophisticated sensors are placed into every physical thing that is being now created to better understand how they work and how they can work together. Those sophisticated devices in an IoT platform allow information to communicate with other devices and with other apps that communicate at that IoT platform. That process starts with a device that secures information, communicates it, and then provides valuable data that allows the specific need to be addressed. So, if we see our panel, we have personalities which represent the industries where we have those devices, those smart devices that get the collection of the data in those embedded sensors. We have also a service provider that allows us to guarantee the security of the information that is being transferred and to trace down transactions as they occur. We have digital infrastructure. We have 2 lawyers in this panel. So we have everything that we need to get into the matter. So if you allow me, I would ask our panelists here, and I would address this question primarily to the 2 gentlemen on my right, Luis and John. You are aware of the current telecommunication infrastructure in Mexico. And everybody's thinking about and talking about smart cities and the use of IoT, digital twins, and other technology. So with the current telecommunication structure, with the current legal structure, is that possible? Or what needs to be done for this, for the growth of Mexico into smart cities in the future? Please, John.
Good afternoon. Lo siento, mi español muy mal. Vivo aquí en Mexico 10 años. Briefly, there's for the people in the back that are having coffee, I'd like to ask that you pay attention to this presentation because it's going to affect the way you conduct business personally and professionally. But Two words: digital convergence of infrastructure. What is digital infrastructure? It's fiber, it's wireless, and it's edge data centers. Three components that enable the highway of what's coming in terms of IoT, 5G, smart cities, artificial intelligence, which today are a bunch of buzzwords that people really have heard a lot about, but they don't understand what they mean in how you're going to do business. If I'm a CEO or a general director of a company, I better understand this global paradigm shift of technology that will change real estate, industrial, manufacturing, service, hospitality, and more importantly, the way local municipalities, the role they play in a private-public partnership where the private sector, in Mexico, living here 10 years, municipalities don't have money, they're never going to have money. So the private sector, people like myself, are going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in deploying this infrastructure. Today in Mexico, it's a total disaster. Walk out any part of Mexico, look at a CFE pole. You're supposed to have 3 cables on a pole. You have 20 cables, okay? There's billions of dollars of investment from the private sector internationally that wants to come into Mexico to open up the telecom IT market. There's all sorts of new businesses that will be created. The talent in the universities here in Mexico is as good as any university in the United States. I can go to Querétaro and talk to a Bombardier engineer, and he's as good as MIT. So at the end of the day, the need for building the highway of infrastructure to enable all these buzzwords you all hear about, that's where we need to start.
Luis, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. I mean, when technology goes very fast, we can not have 5G if we don't have the infrastructure. We can have the best technology, but if we don't have the infrastructure to get it through from point A to point B, is useless at the end of the day. There has been, a telecommunications reform. There are great ideas on the pipeline, Red Compartida, Red Troncal that is coming next year. I think they're fantastic. There are a lot of entry barriers to get there still. The infrastructure that is out there today, a lot of it is in private hands, and it is difficult to access to that infrastructure for third parties coming in. There's a lot of money that is needed in the infrastructure, but again, it has to make business sense from many points of view. And the government has to take a very proactive role. First of all, they have to forget that or they have to see it more long-term investment and not necessarily try to recuperate a fee or a tax to have infrastructure deployed. We have the problem of the municipalities, as you mentioned it. I mean, there is the question always, whether you are putting infrastructure and where you're going to find roadblocks from any governmental agency in the process. And that puts a great level of uncertainty and cost into the project. So do we have smart cities or are we close? We need a lot of infrastructure. We are definitely very far away from it, and it's a lot of work to be done. Technology goes very fast. We need infrastructure fast, and we are years behind.
Okay, in the first panel that most of you were here and listened, Mr. Ignacio Garcia Fresno was making a reference to that a lot of planning has to be done with respect to infrastructure, and he actually made a note with respect to IoT and smart cities, and it definitely needs a lot of planning. So everybody here is very well aware of what is IoT? No. Or what is a smart city? Okay. IoT is every day we have that we use phones, we use thermometers, we use cars that have Wi-Fi, and those devices have sensors. Those sensors provide information, gather information, and that information is shared with other devices. So for example, let me put you a little example of a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing, for example, you have your Garmin in your hand, your watch, and you have a heart attack. And that watch can inform the local authorities, your doctor, or the ambulance that you're having a stroke without you doing nothing. So that is in IoT. That information is being shared, and that thing is saving your life. On the other hand, you, for example, use Waze in your car, and you actually use another Garmin in your hand. And the police could come at your house and tell you that you drove while intoxicated because you use Waze, your heart was monitored by the Garmin, and you are actually under arrest because the C4 cameras of Mexico City were taking photographs of you. So that's the way that devices are working for IoT. So before going into infrastructure, let me ask the three gentlemen at the end of this line how they consider that, in your opinion, what's Mexico areas of opportunities when adapting technology, talking about IoT, and creating smart cities in the future. I don't know who wants to take the lead. Alberto, please.
Hi, good morning, and well, actually afternoon just right now. Well, taking several concepts that Edgar shared with us, specifically in the elevator business or vertical transportation business, IoT, Internet of Things, is very interesting as well because it works exactly as Edgar described. An elevator, which is something that we usually step into without acknowledging anything that works behind the box that opens up and takes us to a floor, and then we come out. Well, behind an elevator, there are a bunch of sensors that are giving us information regarding speed, temperature, door cycles, vibrations, and all that information goes to a central controller, the elevator controller, and Schindler specifically is pioneer in Latin America, setting a product that's called Schindler Head that connects those controllers with IoT, Internet of Things, through a cloud, manages that information, and gives several things that to our basic customers and our passengers give an extra. And those things are basically predictive situations, proactive situations, sharing information with our customers, and expanding the passenger experience. Proactive and preventive situations happen when, for example, an elevator system, most of their faults are related to door problems. So it basically gives us hints of when a specific device or door is giving problems, and it triggers our service managers or service technicians, and even the facilities managers or the landlord. It triggers them, sends them a message telling them that it's necessary to give a specific preventive maintenance into that device. It's very much like our health. Well, our doctors, like Edgar explained, will not be able to tell us when we will have a stroke or when we will have a meltdown health-wise. But they do give us statistics of how our health is and help us guide to take preventive measures of that. So also, it's sharing information with our customers. It gives them an idea. A product is many times designed for 100,000 cycles or maybe 1,000,000 cycles. So this statistics and information will come through our Internet of Things will give our customers a preventive and predictive idea of when they need to start saving money so they can upgrade their elevator or their vertical transportation system. So it's very interesting how our IoT gives us an enhanced experience both to us in the elevator industry and to our passengers. And going back to the passenger experience, it's very important and it's a challenge for our industry to converge our industry with other technologies like public transportation, parking lots. There's no point on having a smart building with a smart elevator that brings you to your destination in the shortest time if you go to your car, start it up, and you're going to be 45 minutes going out the parking lot, or it'll take you 2 hours to get out on the street and get home. And a smart city equals, at least to me, to quality of life. Quality of life gives you more time to spend with the loved ones, with things that you like. And so definitely that's one of our challenges, and we need to converge different technologies between elevator industry, public transportation, and many other things within buildings.
Baltazar?
Yes, with regards of how to use and leverage this within Mexico, one of the things that I do see is that even though there is, as we heard in the last question, a large need of basic infrastructure in order to develop a lot of value, with the current infrastructure available, we can already start developing a lot of value, and we can develop that value within Mexico. We are reaching a key point in time where our scarcest resource is not capital. It's not actually the infrastructure. What we need right now is resourcefulness. We need creativity in order to come up with brand new business models. The thing is, in terms of what you already have, in terms of mobile availability, of already deployed sensors like what you have in fitness watches, what you have on your phone, you can already start developing a lot of that brand new use cases. And for that, the amount of infrastructure and the amount of capital that you need to invest is relatively small. You can do this by using the cloud and leveraging stuff like blockchain or, for example, artificial intelligence, and you can use that as a service model, and that implies that you're shifting from a capital-intensive point of view into an operating cost point of view, and that allows you for more creativity. Now, the possibilities are endless, but then the other thing that we do have is that by increasing the amount and number of sensors that we have out there, we're actually exposing a huge amount of vulnerabilities. Like, for example, roughly like a year and a half ago, we had a very big brownout of internet infrastructure, and actually that happened from a huge denial of service attack perpetrated by a bunch of hackers hacking into quote-unquote smart cameras that don't know if you know this, but roughly 85% of home-based smart cameras are actually built by one manufacturer in China. And this guy's had a really nasty backdoor that got exploited, and people used that infrastructure in order to develop a large-scale denial of service attack. Thus, we need to have a point of view of securing those devices. And actually, one of the most innovative use cases that I'm seeing right now is hooking up those devices into the blockchain, where you can have, for example, a smart contract, and have that smart contract regulate who has access to which information and for what purposes. And the thing is, by having that, we can have auditable and shared point of view on who should have access to our data. And the thing is, currently, right now, just by being here, you're generating tons and tons of data, and you don't know what people are actually doing that. Like, for example, just a quick show of hands. How many of you guys go to Starbucks? Okay, we have like 1/3 of the people admitting to being Starbucks fans. The other one are probably closet hipsters. But the thing is, For example, by going into a Starbucks, if you carry your mobile phone, regardless of the fact of you actually joining their network already knows about your public phone going in there, okay? So think of this. By having that data, I can tell and start developing patterns on how often do you actually go to Starbucks. When you go there, do you actually connect to the network? How long are you staying there? And if you actually use, for example, Starbucks smart app in order to pay for stuff, then I also know what your average ticket is. Thus, I can know whether or not you're going to Starbucks just to reach the internet or if you're actually just consuming stuff. And the thing is, that amount of data allows me to predict your consumer habits. It allows me to predict your social network. It allows me to predict a whole bunch of stuff. And the thing is, who's actually owning that data? Thus, if you start owning your own data, whatever you generate, then you can leverage that into consumer power. Right now, you're the product, and what I want you to do is use stuff like the blockchain in order for you to be the owner of your own data. Because the Internet of Things isn't something that's going to happen. It's something that is currently happening, and that I'm actually using and doing on a daily basis as part of IBM Mexico. Thus, we need that extra security layer in order to start building more stuff in a secure fashion.
Jorge, what do you think?
Yo advertí que iba a hablar en español. Okay. Sorry, John. Me gusta mucho lo que dices. Yo les voy a dar dos ejemplos concretos de realidad del Internet de las cosas, con dos realidades, probablemente no sean novedades, pero son dos realidades en la ciudad. Uno, el modelo de SACUA para 2020 va a tener incorporado un sensor para medir la contaminación atmosférica. Esto es muy bueno en términos de información porque eso subirá a una red justamente para que esté a disposición. Y si hoy tenemos una enorme cantidad de información en el Valle de México de cómo está la condición del aire, pues cuando haya cientos o eventualmente miles de vehículos con sensores en las calles, tendremos un diagnóstico mucho más certero de cómo está. Pero lo importante del tema no es ese. Lo importante del tema es que la gente se involucre en ese asunto. Me gustó mucho lo que decías de la calidad de vida. Es cierto, las sociedades occidentales modernas demandan mucho de nosotros. Demandan mucho de nuestra persona, de nuestro tiempo, de nuestra manera de ser, y también ayudan a resolver este sentido de pertenencia. La ciudad me pertenece al mismo tiempo que yo le pertenezco a ella, y el hecho de tener un sensor y saber que uno es parte de la información hace que ese efecto gelatina, como de que cuando uno le pica y las cosas se mueven, pero se mueven fuera de mí, se elimine un poco. No, yo estoy dentro de esa gelatina y cuando yo subo información soy parte de todo ese ecosistema. Y eso es lo que me parece más importante para la parte del SACUA. Estacionamientos. A ver, en estacionamientos el mundo va, y nosotros estamos trabajando en ello también, a tener igual en la calle, en los parquímetros, que en los estacionamientos cerrados, todas las matrículas de los vehículos que entran. Esto es obligatorio en algunos países por temas de seguridad. Y sí, hicimos un convenio con Secretaría de Seguridad Pública, con la Asociación Nacional de Seguros y Fianzas, porque uno de los delitos más sentidos en las ciudades es el robo de automóviles. Y subimos la información en tiempo real, de manera que tuvimos unas cosas que llaman hit, cuando hubo vehículos de placas reportadas robadas, igual en la calle que en estacionamientos cerrados, de manera que se ubicaron, se localizaron y hubo una capacidad de reacción mucho más importante. Toda esa información es Internet de las cosas en ciudades y para efectos concretos. Ahora, termino. Claro que asusta, porque entonces se sabe dónde estás todos los días y se sabe exactamente cuánto tiempo estuviste en ese estacionamiento o en esa calle. Los coches son difíciles de esconder, y si además está la matrícula y si además traes un reloj que te dice todo aquello que dices que dice, yo no puedo dejar de sentirme emocionado por mirar hacia dónde vamos y un poco invadido también. Porque si el reloj sabe tanto sobre el corazón, también sabe cuando tienes un orgasmo. Y lo digo en serio. De manera que tenemos que ser muy responsables con cómo participamos adentro del asunto como actores reales, pero con la enorme responsabilidad que nos atañe a cada uno en la medida en que formamos parte de una comunidad y que tenemos que hacerlo con mucha responsabilidad. Y más allá de lo personal, las empresas, las empresas, porque Dios guarde el hora con toda esa información.
Thanks so much, Jorge. Thank you for that. Using that word that just woke up everybody here. Okay. So if you notice from what we're doing in the panel, we have digital infrastructure, legal, blockchain, and we have two big companies that are gathering information. I don't know if you felt what I was when the last three persons were talking, that you start thinking out loud, well, there's security issues here. There are issues that has to be, because there are a lot of opportunities. And the world is going that way. Now we have a lot of portable devices and smartphones, but the world has to go that way. And there are millions of dollars waiting to be invested in this. But there's a lot of issues regarding security, regarding personal information, sensitive information that have to be considered. So that's why we have this mixture here. So let me ask here the panel. In Mexico, we live a lot of realities. And if you look at the census, and I looked it up in the website, obviously, I saw that there were about 5 municipalities which are very relevant and that the level of poverty is really, really low. 2 are in Mexico City, which are Benito Juárez and Miguel Hidalgo, and the other 3 are in Monterrey. San Pedro Garza Garcia, Guadalupe, and another one. I don't know, probably. But considering the reality of Mexico, what do you think? Please feel free to jump in. What do you think of could be done for these municipalities to apply such technology and to impact their citizens in the near future, to make them smart cities, to use all this information which is available and to try to enhance it, invest in technology? What do you think? I don't know who wants to jump in. Jorge, please.
Gracias. A ver, separando. Una parte ciudades, porque por ejemplo, el municipio de Benito Juárez, la delegación está inserta en la ciudad. La visión ahí no puede ser más que metropolitana. Es muy distinta a otros municipios. Tocaba yo el ejemplo de San Miguel de Allende, con un estándar de vida bien interesante, con una ciudad deliciosa en la que se están haciendo cosas muy buenas. Ahí hay un proyecto, por ejemplo, en términos de movilidad y ciudad inteligente, que pasa desde inhibir el uso del auto particular a grado tal que la gente no entre al centro, a menos que pague un peaje importante, pero dotaron de estacionamientos de transferencia afuera de la ciudad, de manera que dejes tu coche afuera y entres en un shuttle que va dando una ruta permanentemente, o bajes en un vehículo de car sharing, o bajes en otro tipo de transporte. Desde luego va todo junto, y va todo con información en tiempo real. Está bien, eso está padrísimo, será un ejemplo a nivel mundial, y tan linda ciudad estoy seguro que va a ser exitoso y atractivo. En el caso de Benito Juárez y la visión metropolitana, digo telegráficamente, a ver, ahí el tema es bastante más delicado, y yo los invito a que meditemos sobre una cosa. El gran reto de las ciudades inteligentes pasa por la clase media y la media alta, más que por cualquier otro lado. Pasa por el nivel de corresponsabilidad, y perdón yo si los irrito un poco, pero no me molesta tampoco, porque hay que salir de la franja de confort. A ver, a la clase política le da pavor meterse con la clase media, y entonces tú tienes segundos pisos y cosas aterradoras. Y claro, cuando hablas de movilidad inteligente y el reto de bajar a la clase media de su coche, conste que vendemos coches eléctricos, pero la peor inversión en el mundo es comprar un coche. Para bajar a la clase media de su coche, lo primero que te responden siempre es: sí, pero es que el transporte público es patético. Y es cierto. Entonces, a ver, tenemos que mirar que la tasa de motorización en México es de 370 coches por cada 1,000 personas. Pero esos 370 coches no quiere decir que es el 37%. A ver, esos 370 coches están en el 20% de la población. La ley de Pareto ahí es transparente. En fin, lo digo porque más que la inteligencia virtual, artificial, el OIT y toda la tecnología que pongamos a disposición, que hay que ponerla, lo que tenemos que poner más es la voluntad y el nivel de responsabilidad compartida, porque de nada sirve digitalizar la desigualdad y la inconsciencia. Lo que tenemos que digitalizar es la responsabilidad compartida y la voluntad de vivir en comunidad.
Okay. Can I add something else? I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying right now, and I would only like to add something else. Even though we fixate on the idea of maybe, for example, the largest or the most or the richest municipalities doing the first initiatives in terms of IoT or smarter cities, I do not actually believe that that is going to be the case. The first ones that are actually going to happen are those that manage to align the different incentives and to generate value to all of the different participants. One of the things that Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winner in terms of economics, said that I think is very valid is that the only form of sustainable wealth is shared wealth. Thus, all of the players need to reap some sort of benefit out from it. And this is going to be even more the case as we move on to the future. Think of this. We're shifting from an economy where everything had to be centralized, the greatest center of power being government. And currently, right now, what we're seeing is an economy that's shifting into the whole idea of building networks. It's like, for example, if you look at the Fortune 500 list a couple of years ago, I mean, when I was a kid, the Fortune 500 list didn't actually move that much. Yeah, you get some people joining the list and some others leaving it, but it pretty much stayed the same. And if you look at it for the last 15 years, you'll see a huge shakeup of companies disappearing. And a lot of the companies that are right now in the Fortune 500 are under 20 years old. What's happening is we're seeing a big paradigm shift. And those that are actually joining that list and staying on that list are network builders. I mean, you probably heard this whole stupid example about Uber and Airbnb of them not owning the assets. That's actually looking at the future with the back of your head. You're trying to explain the future by looking at the past. One thing you need to ask yourself is, what are they actually owners of? And what they're owners of a network that links people that want a good or a service, and of people that are actually willing to give that service. What they're speaking there is that those models, the ones that are going to take over, are those that add value to the network. They're giving value to the drivers and they're giving value to the passengers. Same thing is going to happen in terms of smarter cities. If you build a smart city just aligned to whatever a government is looking for, it'll be good for the government, but it probably won't serve the citizens, and the citizens won't go in, or the private enterprise won't go in. If you only serve the purposes of the private enterprise, people are not going to buy in. We need to develop brand new models, and those models are going to be network-based, where everyone reaps some sort of benefit. And that can happen even in the poorest municipalities. I mean, look at stuff. I used to work for the Servicio de Administración Tributaria, for SAT, and besides losing all of my friends by charging taxes, one of the things that we did is we actually built stuff like, for example, the electronic invoice. And when we did the electronic invoice, there were a bunch of countries wanting to do similar type of initiatives. And currently, right now, the #1 country in the whole world in terms of fiscal intelligence, in terms of electronic invoices, is Mexico. And the one thing we did is we didn't take only into account the incentives of protecting the tax authority. We did it in a way in which it would be cheaper for private industry to issue and manage invoices. And by aligning those incentives, you can actually get more buy-in into different technologies. Now, in terms of this, there's even more possibilities of adding more value to the whole set of participants. If that happens, and whoever comes up with the right equation on balancing those needs and in balancing that value, those are going to be the municipalities that are actually going to be the first hitters and the first successes in terms of IoT.
John, do you want to interject here?
Yeah, I'll jump in. IoT will generate over $25 trillion in revenue in 6 years. I can't tell you today the applications. It's like the iPhone when it came out. And the stock was $17, and then a lot of the young people sitting home in their garages created applications, and now it's an intelligent device. As far as sensors and chips, there's 26 trillion chips and sensors that are going into everything that you can imagine. I'm an old man, but everything will be communicating with everything. Machine to machine. Your coffee cup is empty. The waiter in the back is going to get a message on his Fitbit watch. Says, go to table 1, fill up coffee. What a tremendous opportunity is for Mexico to control its own destiny. No more pointing fingers. You know, in the U.S., we can't even count ballots. We have poor cybersecurity. So the most important thing I like to emphasize is this is going to happen, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. Everyone in this room, no matter what business or private, public sector you're in, your business is going to change. And the most important thing is neutral infrastructure. What do I mean by that? In summary, is whatever the municipality, whatever the real estate community, the manufacturing company puts in for infrastructure, again, fiber, wireless, data centers, okay, has to be neutral, which means we love everybody. We love AT&T, we love Google. Please use our infrastructure. Let competition happen. This is a great industry for women to be in right now. I have never seen a bigger industry opportunity for women to find their roles in this industry. There is a shortage of workers, and I encourage that women engage the era of this digital revolution. But the infrastructure must be shared, must be neutral. If you give it to one company, you're eliminating competition and choice to your tenants, to your municipality, potential IoT applications. So shared infrastructure.
Okay. I believe that by now the audience should know what IoT means. Generating this information, blah, blah, blah. Very interesting things that we said, and the buzzwords are starting to take figure. Now, we go to smart cities, and that is using all that information to make sustainable solutions for the citizens. And we talked about neutral networks, how this could be done by the municipalities. I'm going to make one last question and then go to the questions. So we have 10 minutes for you to prepare your questions. I think that now that you understand what it means and how it can impact you, your businesses, your municipalities, or your governments, you are prepared to make questions. So let me go to a question. I probably address this to Baltazar and to Luis. IoT implies sharing an immense amount of data, both sensitive and not. What's need to be considered while applying technology and creating truly smart cities in Mexico to keep them safe, especially when creating smart infrastructure?
Thank you. Definitely, there are a lot of challenges. More information brings more issues. Neutral networks brings the issue of, getting information up there into another network and sharing that information. And there, I believe all information now is really sensitive. I mean, by all means, and should be protected. I do believe that the protection of information and having the systems, the software in place is more of a responsibility of the companies involved than actually depending on having the government or the network actually protecting that. It should be an investment not only in business terms, but in legal terms. I mean, a breaching of information now can cost millions of dollars of losses to a company by having his information shared with competitors, with authorities, with whomever you don't want. And the legal implications, I don't think we have seen yet the legal implications of actually a breach of information so far. Certainly can bring a lot of damages to a company, competitors, or even to public entities. So it is an issue that companies should be investing in every single day. The more information there is, the more technology there is, the more ways to breach the information are. So companies have to be upfront and really taking the issue of securing the information and the privacy policies, not only having your privacy message posted, but actually securing private information of your own customers. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is and how the company should be dedicated to this issue.
I just would like to add that cybersecurity, there has to be dedicated resources internally in the organization, internally in the municipality, third-party relationships, but cybersecurity is never going away, ever. It will be an ongoing battle for the next 100 years, but the paradigm shift on how we all will be communicating and doing business, we'll have to do our best, but I can assure you there's somebody in Ukraine right now trying to steal 50 million Facebook users, okay? And that is always going to happen, and you can't stop it, all right? So it's built into this paradigm shift. I think he's made a very good point.
Yeah, and you see, cybersecurity is actually something that's happening right now. We need to develop even more cybersecurity. We need to be more aware of the sensitiveness of our data. However, there's no way of actually putting the worms back in the can. They're already out there, and we depend even more in terms of information. And you see, the benefits can actually be a lot bigger than the risks that are involved right now. Think of this. Data with context begets information. Information with even more context begets knowledge. And we actually do need that knowledge in order to attain a sustainable society. Look at stuff like this. For example, one of the things that we're doing right now with blockchain, with IoT, is food safety. And the whole idea of food safety is, how do you know that actually the food that you're buying is fresh? How do you know that it's actually from the brand that you trust and love? One thing I found out, which I found really amazing, is the fact that currently in the world, we sell more organic products than are actually produced. How is that possible? Well, what's happening is that since you are willing to pay an overprice in order to get organic foods, people will give you non-organic foods and just slap a label on top of it. Okay, so there's a lot of fraud out there. By adding the blockchain, you can have certainty, and you can know whether or not those foods are ethically produced, if they're organic or not, or what have you. But also one of the key elements here is that we can actually reduce the amount of food that we lose, for example, in terms of food expiry. Right now, we do not have enough knowledge of knowing when you need foodstuffs at every particular point, in every city, in every municipality. I mean, and this is humongous. We lose, in terms of just waste, roughly around 35% of all the food produced in the world. So 35% goes to the trash. And this is even bigger in terms of proportion, oddly enough, the richer the country is. Thus, for example, the US actually wastes more food than we do in Mexico. But for example, if we add sensors, if we get that data, if we store it in a blockchain, then we can start detecting patterns. And by detecting patterns, we can foresee what's coming. We can move from being reactive into being predictive. And once you're predictive, you can start adding value by reducing the amount of waste. And that will happen with food, that will happen with energy, that will happen with any form of resource that we currently do have. Thus, by doing that, you will reap larger benefits than the amount of threats that we get in terms of cybersecurity. Now, you do need to look into cybersecurity. I'm not minimizing it. But the thing is, it is something that we need to address because the benefits are needed in order to hold a sustainable society. If we keep on wasting resources as we do right now, then we won't have to worry about cybersecurity because pretty much everything is going to hell. Okay, so the thing is, we shouldn't be Luddites. We shouldn't put our head in a hole like an ostrich. We need to face the future and start building that future in a way in which we can attain those sustainable benefits. And those benefits will only happen if we actually address each and everyone's needs in terms of a network. We need to build networks in order to enforce some sort of sustainability in terms of our society.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take Sarah Warden's question and rephrase it a little and address this to Alberto. Okay. Alberto, you come from a company that invests all over the world and makes research and development all over the world. With respect to other countries and other type of economies, have you seen an increase in investment in what is IoT in Mexico, or what the intention is to make an investment on IoT in Mexico, or increase the investment in technology in Mexico? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, specifically our company, Schindler, it's related to the vertical transportation industry, which is directly related to construction. Construction, of course, it's completely directly connected with connection to Internet of Things, and everybody's looking into that. And if you look into a building, the building that we're just sitting in this meeting room right now, it has air conditioning, it has lighting, it has elevators, it has pump units for water. So everybody is looking on how to connect all those devices and all those systems into Internet of Things. And yes, there's a trend in looking on how to connect, how to look at, taking on John's words, how to do business with all that information, how to be predictive, and how not to be reactive. When usually, going specifically to the elevator business, we've been working for many years is nobody really cares about an elevator or an escalator until it shut down. So that's when we call the service provider and say, hey, my elevator or my escalator doesn't work. I need to get your guys to get here and get it working as soon as possible, but we're not doing anything predictively or preventively. So that's where all the service providers, not just vertical transportation, will be looking into getting information and preventing different situations. So there's a definite trend regarding that.
Okay. Baltazar, there are two questions for you. Let me try to sum it up by Pablo Bagionio and Pablo Ledesma. First is, please provide a practical example of the application of blockchain to transport infrastructure, and how can blockchain could be implemented for transparency, corruption fighting, in public construction?
Okay, it's a broad scope.
You have 3 hours to take
I have 3 hours. No, if you could repeat just the first one.
Yes. Can you please provide a practical example of the application of blockchain to transport infrastructure?
Okay. Okay, so for example, I'll try and address both of them with one single example, okay? And I'll actually make it sustainable in terms of our environment. For example, if we could hook up sensors on containers, which we actually currently do with an IBM on the TradeLens product that we have right now, by hooking those sensors, you can actually detect where those containers are, okay? And you can also determine stuff like, for example, whether or not it's moving, at what speed it's moving, whether or not someone actually dropped that container, what temperature that container is right now. So by doing that, by adding that IoT sensor and then hooking that up over to the internet, to the blockchain, the one thing I'm doing with that is generating evidence that's tamper-proof in terms of that data. Okay, so what the whole deal with this is, okay, for example, I could use that data in order to do planning, doing my routes, on doing all the logistics. But I could also use that information, for example, to feed that information into an insurance provider. Thus, for example, let's assume I'm shipping cocoa butter on it. And cocoa butter, if it goes over 25 degrees, it starts melting and it starts tasting like soap. Thus, I don't want it to go over 25 degrees. Now, if I'm monitoring that, not only can I tell whether or not my shipment went over 25 degrees, but if it actually goes over 25, then it can send directly through a blockchain a message, for example, to my insurance provider. And then I start issuing an automated claim. And by doing that, I'm reducing the amount of paperwork and the amount of actual human labor that needs to go into processing that claim, and I can get faster results. Now, by having those IoT devices, offering those tamper-proof data or evidence, it can be used for stuff like audits. It can be used in terms of, for example, transparency. You want to ensure that no one tampered with that particular piece of data, that, for example, the shipment that you did came in without someone opening up that container and then adding drugs into it. You can show that information. And in that particular case, you're joining stuff like, for example, the commercial elements that go into that supply chain. You're adding, for example, the government in order to ensure phytosanitary health. You can ensure customs. You can have the insurance provider. And by doing that, you're adding transparency to each and every one of the players. By having that, you reduce the amount of cost that needs to go in order to support that network. And by doing that, you can also generate enough data in order to avoid stuff like, for example, waste. Because if that container was going all the way from Africa over into the US, and at one particular point in time, you detect that it was damaged in a mid-port, let's say, for example, in Europe, then you can actually take away that container and stop wasting the amount of energy that you need to take it over to the US because you already know that that container is damaged. Thus, by doing that, I mean, the possibilities are almost endless. If you want to look into how to build this sort of solutions, I would recommend don't go into the technology. Don't try and understand that technology. Try and understand what that technology can do for you. What could you do if you would have tamper-proof evidence of something happening? What can you do if suddenly your devices can give you information on what is going to happen? What will you do if you can start adding, for example, stuff like artificial intelligence and determining patterns? By understanding that, you can build a brand new business models that actually leverage on that technology. And you can actually do this right now. Think about this. Today, two guys in a Starbucks with a credit card probably have access to the same amount of and type of technology that a Fortune 500 company does. Thus, the only thing that you need are the creative ideas on how to add a blockchain, add IoT, add artificial intelligence, and build those brand new business models. Hope that answers the question.
I hope it does. I think we've gone a little over time. I have one last question. I don't want to be rude, so let's take it. Probably, John, this would be for you. Do we have in Mexico the infrastructure for IoT if we're not 100% digitalized?
We do not have the infrastructure in Mexico. We do not have the infrastructure in the United States. And hundreds of billions of dollars of just fiber infrastructure in the U.S. has to be installed. In Mexico, it's really a greenfield situation. As a CEO, you have to be looking at your facilities 5 years out, 10 years out, this paradigm shift for technology. Your CTO, your CIO need to be able to see this change, all right? But we do not have the infrastructure today. It's a tremendous opportunity. My oficina is 222. If an earthquake comes, I'm okay because I'm on the first floor. But this is the opportunity that is going on in Africa and other third world country emerging markets. Mexico has the talent. Mexico has the will to join the global community through collaboration. I spoke to many of the panelists today. I think our conversations will continue. There's no single solution. And the answer to your question is no. Even in this hotel, is this an IoT-friendly hotel today? The answer is no. Okay? So everybody in this room, okay, has an opportunity to contribute in your own way in the private and public sector. You can laugh, but if you don't do this, Mexico will continue to be in the bottom 100 of broadband penetration. This is Mexico's golden age to play on a level playing field that will attract industry in every city. I'm interested in agriculture. I'm putting connectors around cows in the United States that communicate via the internet. We talked a little bit about agriculture. Look at all the communities, Uridia with corn. Mm-hmm. These are all IoT applications that it's going to generate local jobs, new industries. So the answer is no, but this is the first step, and I think the panelists here are all brought together. Both legally, you're going to need that expertise to
thank God
to create the relationship between the investor, the municipalities. Will the municipalities be saying, John, pay me. I'll let you work here. Pay me. That's Mexico. I live here. Or will the municipalities say, we want to be a progressive city? That's what I'm waiting to see with the new president and the new administration. Thank you.
Jorge, you wanted to say final thing?
Sí, una cosa final rápida. Por esa pregunta y por lo que dice John, y subyace en lo que dice John, yo encuentro un subyacente en varias de las intervenciones que hizo que me gustaron mucho. A ver, probablemente la mayor y mejor oportunidad que tiene México, que tenemos como sociedad, es que cuando hay estos trastornos que generan las coyunturas en los cambios de paradigma, se abre un umbral de tiempo en el que nos igualamos todos. Es un espacio de oportunidad que a los desiguales los pone en la línea de salida como para empezar igual. Y luego, ¿con qué? ¿Con qué empaque? ¿Con qué arrestos le entro a eso? Y creo que México tiene todas las características, ya no las repito, para poder en esa coyuntura, en esa oportunidad, cuyo fenómeno es difícil, o no difícil, va a pasar mucho tiempo en que se repita, como para desaprovechar esa oportunidad. Hombres, mujeres y niños, todos, a ver, las naciones, tiene razón Juárez cuando dice que se relacionan igual que las personas. Como país tenemos esa enorme oportunidad durante un umbral de tiempo en el que el cambio de paradigmas, la parte disruptiva de la incursión de nuevos elementos tecnológicos nos pone iguales a todos. Y hay que aprovecharle y entrarle sin titubeos.
Muchas gracias a todos, espero que lo hayan disfrutado. Muchas gracias. Jóvenes, muchas gracias.